India is becoming a hub for foreign waste. It is quite concerning issue. On one hand, we are growing rapidly as an economy, but on the other hand, we are becoming a dumping ground for other countries' garbage. How did this happen? Well, let's start with the fact that developed countries like US, UK, and other many European nations produces an enormous amount of waste, especially electronic and plastic waste. China banned the import of foreign plastic waste, causing a major disruption in the global waste market. Suddenly, developed countries had no way to send their trash, and that's when countries like India, Malaysia, and Indonesia became prime targets. By 2019, India saw a sharp increase in the import of plastic waste, especially from countries like the US, Australia, and UK. We produce more than 3.5 billion tons of plastic waste annually, and the management of this waste is far from efficient. Adding foreign waste to this already huge pile makes the problem worse. It's a bit like someone dumping their trash in your backyard because you already have some there. And what's worse, a lot of this waste is non-recyclable, especially electronic waste. It contains hazardous materials like lead and mercury. India is estimated to generate over 3.2 million metric tons of e-waste every year, and handling foreign e-waste on top of that only exacerbates the problem. In fact, one of the biggest issues is that a large portion of this waste ends up in informal recycling sectors where workers are exposed to toxic chemicals without any safety measures. It's a kind of shocking. It's kind of shocking when you think about it. These workers are breaking down electronic devices with their bare hands. These workers are inhaling dangerous fumes. The environmental impact is massive too. Dumping waste into rivers or burning it releases harmful pollutants, contributing to air and water pollution. There have been efforts to control this. In 2019, India banned the import of plastic waste under the plastic waste management rules. But as we all know, bans on paper don't always work as planned. There is still a thriving illegal trade of waste, often labeled as recyclable material, slipping through the cracks of the regulatory system. Countries like the US still manage to send large amounts of waste here legally or illegally because enforcement is tricky. To put it in perspective, according to the United Nations, between 50 to 80% of the world's e-waste is shipped to Asia, and India is one of the largest destinations. It is a complicated issue because on one hand, the recycling industry provides jobs to a lot of people, and on the other hand, the environmental and health impacts are severe. It's almost like we are stuck in the vicious cycle. The global demand for electronics and plastics is skyrocketing, and so is the waste. While India is trying to grow economically and become a global leader, it is also means dealing with the byproducts of consumption, both our own and others. How we balance economic growth with environmental responsibility. It's tough. It's a tough one, but something has to give. Let's talk about a reality that's hidden in a plain sight: foreign waste in India. A report by Bloomberg recently revealed that India, known for its diversity and progress, it has become a dumping ground for the world's waste. We might wonder How did this happen? Not too far from the bustling city of Delhi, in Muzaffarnagar, there are children. Yes, there are children. They are scavenging through huge mounds of garbage. And do you know what's shocking? That garbage has traveled over 12,000 kilometers from countries like the United States and Europe. Why? Because it's easier for these wealthy nations to export their trash rather than deal with it themselves. Since 2019, we have a ban in place, but there is a sneaky loophole. Paper factories in India, they import waste paper because it's cheaper than using wood. But there is the point, these bales of paper often comes with a surprise package of plastic waste. It is estimated that we might be bringing in over 5 lakh tons of plastic waste every year, hidden in these paper shipments. Imagine all that plastic floating around in our landfills, rivers and streets. And plastic is not the only problem. Sometimes even hazardous e-waste or bio-waste, they get mixed in. The world generates over 2.1 billion tons of solid waste annually, and this number is expected to skyrocket to 3.40 billion tons by 2050. A third of this mismanaged in unsafe and mismanaged in environmentally hazardous waste. And high-income countries, which represents only 16% of the global population, they generate a whopping 34% of the world's waste. That's around 683 million tons of trash. Countries like ours, India, and China, Sri Lanka, Malaysia, Indonesia, they have traditionally been the dumping grounds for this waste. Countries like Malaysia and Vietnam, they have already started sending those waste shipments back. But our country, India, is still struggling to send them back. The situation is so bad. The situation is so bad that illegal waste imports have reached over 121,000 metric tons in India, dumped by private companies. And this waste is not just our everyday plastic wrappers. We are talking about harmful, hazardous materials that affect the health of our people who are forced to work in these dangerous conditions. Rag pickers, many of them children. The children, they sift through these garbage heaps, exposing themselves to toxic chemicals. And India, that is not only struggling with its own waste, but also being treated as the world's trash can. Our country generates around 80 million tons of waste on its own, but we can only process about 25 to 30 million tons of it. The rest goes to landfills, adding to the mountains of garbage we see on the outskirts of our cities. So, what do? It's not just about banning imports. It's not just about banning imports, but it's about ensuring that loopholes like these should be closed. The loophole should be closed. There has been talk of setting up special economic zones dedicated to recycling these waste, ensuring that we recycle responsibly. But it needs more than just talk. It requires action from our port officials to turn away contaminated shipments, action from the governments to enforce stricter regulations, and action from all of us to rethink how we handle this waste. If we don't act, we will find ourselves drowning in other people's garbage. And that's not the future we want for India. We need to hold not just ourselves, but also the exporting countries accountable. It's a time to demand change, to stop this flood of foreign waste from poisoning our land, poisoning our air, poisoning our water. The world may produce the waste, but India should not be its final destination. Because the rules exist. The rules exist, but enforcement is weak in our country. And for those rich countries, it's a lot easier and cheaper to send their waste to countries like ours, where environmental standards are looser and desperate people are willing to do dangerous work for very little pay. Despite these horrors, there is a twisted logic behind it. Our politicians would say it generates jobs. As India's environmental minister once said, there is the question of demand and employment. So what do? Just shut down these illegal factories and leave thousands of people jobless? It's not so simple. We have to balance between protecting the environment and ensuring livelihoods. But at what cost? Can we really keep turning a blind eye to the exploitations of our people and land? The truth is, these makeshift factories, many of them illegal, they pay workers a small amount of money a day to handle their materials that no one else wants to touch. They melt down plastic bags to make a new bottles, toys and buckets, releasing toxins into the air that endanger not just the workers, but everyone around. We cannot deny that this is a complex issue. People need jobs, but at what cost? The waste that is pouring in isn't just garbage, it's a toxic time bomb, threatening the well-being of millions. And here is the real tragedy. The toxic waste is not even being properly handled or recycled. It's simply creating more pollution, more illness, and more suffering. We must start asking tough questions. How can we allow the lives of our people to cheapen to the point where their health and future are traded away for toxic waste? How long will we let richer nations to take advantage of our vulnerabilities? This is not just about protecting the environment, it's about protecting our human dignity. The right to work without risking your life and our lives. And the right to breathe clean air and drink uncontaminated water. It's a time we take a stand not just for ourselves, but for the future. We need stronger regulations, better enforcement, and most importantly, a shift in mindset. We cannot afford to let greed and desperation dictate how we handle our waste. We need to create jobs that are safe, that respect the worker, and that do not poison our land and our people in the process. Let's remind ourselves, this is not a problem. This is not a problem we can sweep under the rug or in the case or bury in the landfills. This is a crisis we must confront head on with courage, determination, and a vision for a healthier, safer, and more sustainable future for everyone. Where there are problems, there are solutions. We are not powerless in this. First, we need to approach this waste scientifically. It's about understanding what kind of waste we are dealing with and planning for it. If we can invest in innovative technologies and improve our recycling infrastructure, we can start turning this problem around. We need to make sure our waste collection services are frequent, efficient, and synchronized with when and where waste is being generated. This means getting the informal sector, like the rag pickers, who already play a huge role working hand in hand with formal waste management. Local communities can take charge too. Decentralized waste management can be a game changer. Imagine if neighborhoods handle their own organic waste through composting, turning it into fuel instead of sending it to landfills. Even our existing dumps can be transformed into sanitary landfills, but we need the funding and expertise to do it right. Technology can help us, and waste to energy solutions where organic waste is turned into fuel, it can provide both environmental and economic benefits. But we need more than just technology and infrastructure. We need strong regulations. We need strong regulations that are enforced. No more turning a blind eye to illegal dumping. The polluter pays principle needs to be taken seriously. If someone is responsible for generating waste, they should be held accountable for cleaning it up. Education is key. We need to spread awareness in every community. Education is key. We need to spread awareness in every community through schools, self-help groups, local organizations. Anywhere people gather, we need to learn, separate our waste at the source to recycle to compost. Small actions by individuals, they can lead to big changes in how our country handles waste. Let's not forget, as of now, India generates 1.3 billion tons of trash every year, a third of the global total. That is a third of the global total. That's massive, and right now only 5% of our recyclable material is actually reused. Just think about that. We are sitting on a gold mine of resources and we are wasting it. If we don't take action now, we are not only letting this problem grow, but we are also allowing our environment to suffer irreparable damage. We have got to plan for the long term. Our lifestyles are changing, and so must our approach to waste. Household and institutional waste needs to be separated at the source. Recycling has to become a way of life. We need to minimize our use of landfills, and that's only going to happen if we get communities actively involved. E-waste is a special problem that needs large-scale attention. We have got to get serious about recycling our electronics, phones, computers, appliances. They are filled with toxic materials, and if we don't handle them properly, the consequences for our health and environment will be severe. This is not just an Indian problem, but it is a global problem. India, with its massive population and growing economy, it can either lead the way or bear the brunt of the world's waste crisis. The choice is ours. The choice is ours. We must wake up, we must act, and together we can solve this problem, not just for ourselves, but for future generations. Let's make waste management a priority. Let's stop being the world's dumping ground. It's a time to reclaim our land, our health, and our future. Let's push for a system that values people over profit, that values people over health, that values people over convenience, and sustainability over short-term gains. This is not just about recycling, it is about justice, fairness, and the kind of future we want to build.